We're back.
Welcome to Twin Humanities. I haven't even got a clue what episode this actually is, because it's been a while, because Patrick's been away being a working man again.
They call me the working man.
And there's a bit to discuss today. So there's been tons and tons and tons and tons of Dark Souls 2 hands-ons and opinions that have been floating around the net. So I've correlated a few of those little bits that we can chat upon. Plus, we have a special guest today. We have James Carter from Kane and Rince. Hello, James.
Hello.
So what's your own history with Dark Souls? When did you first pick it up, or did you play Demon Souls beforehand? And
yes, I did. But I hadn't finished Demon Souls by the time Dark Souls was coming out, so I was picking Dark Souls up on the strength of maybe up to about Flame Lurker, somewhere like that, on Demon Souls, and I'd just sort of fallen in love with that, but they were both games that I picked away at for months and never really sort of settled down to concerted effort at until this year. I think March I played through and completed Demon Souls. And then since then, I've not stopped playing Dark Souls. Basically,
I was going to say our own chats sort of on Twitter have been sort of around that, and I remember listening to The Same Coin recently when you were on their podcast.
Yes, yeah.
And a lot of the barrage that you're coming up against was the usual. It's supposed to be brutal, which I've seen mentioned again today with that game by the producer of Witcher 2, which is supposed to be a bit Dark Souls-ish but easier, and I genuinely don't get the brutality and the fiercely difficult aspect of the game, because if anything, I feel the opposite way, that you can take the game at your own pace. You know, if you can't do something, you can take as long as you want to be able to get there, and try numerous different things to achieve your goals. So
yeah, absolutely. No, I think it's one of those things I often say to people who are worried about how difficult Dark Souls is, just to, that it's not difficult once you get into it, but I understand the initial reaction being how difficult it is, so I'm reluctant to just outright say it's not difficult. I think it just takes time to get over the notion of dying being a negative thing. As it tends to be in games. Yeah. Once you accept it, it's it doesn't seem that difficult, because you're always making progress whether you die or not, really. So,
what was the mantra you used to say? It's not hard, it's challenging.
I think normally if somebody picks it up, the little bit of advice I'd give them before they run on is just keep your shield up. Don't be afraid to take a hit on it, because it'll stagger the enemy, and do as you would do if you were actually there. If you're scared of if you be scared of swinging a sword, keep your shield up. If you feel like running away, run away. And usually people kind of tend to click into that really, really quickly.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think the PC version, actually, it helps as well having DSC fix installed, because it means that if someone I know happens to be starting Dark Souls on PC, I can hop straight in there with them and give them a helping hand around Undead Burg and Undead Parish, and just show them the ropes and tell them, help them avoid the pitfalls that plenty of people, including myself, and probably you guys would have fallen into first time around, and just give them a couple of pointers, give them some confidence, and then run away when someone invades and leave them to it.
But there is so much information there now, and I think the community in general is a really good community for helping people out and wanting to pitch in. But I remember, in those early days when we first played it, there was nothing, and I'm sure it was even an epic name bro run through that I saw on YouTube, where I kind of realised the advantages of bringing people into the game, and this was after I'd completed it the first time, because I just thought at that point, what's the point of being human? Because in Demon Souls you got more health, and I just thought it was a design flaw, but I didn't realise that there were NPCs that you could miss. Just what a help it would be, bringing other people in, and the extra benefits of being able to get souls faster, and to then being able to advance your levels quicker, because you get so much more than you'd ordinarily be able to do. And I found that out long after I'd first played it.
And plus, I think if you don't go human, you miss out on all the super hilarious weird stuff that happens when people invade you.
Yeah.
Was it in Ulasil? We were running around for about 10 minutes trying to find our invader, and he was vanished and we couldn't find him. I remember it vividly, just running around going, "Where is this bastard?"
My favourites are always the ones that kind of run towards you, and you bow and you think they're just gonna come and nobble me. They just run towards you and then jump off the nearest ravine.
Well, my personal favourite, again, Ulasil. We went up one of the lifts, and the invader was just stood there. We both panted it, divided, completely didn't fight, ran away like the cowards we are in different directions. Sort of regrouped, ran back, went down the lift again, and then we just sort of heard him die.
Yeah,
he chased us down the lift and missed. It was a wonderful little moment.
I had somebody come into the Soul Level 1 run that I'm doing at the minute and drop a plus 15 chaos something or other, and part of me was like, I can't even use that, and the other one was like, well played. He just sort of walked up, bowed, dropped this weapon, and then went. I was like, that's
sod's law that's the playthrough someone would invade, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to doing a few invasions there myself and making people's lives miserable. But there's only a few of the cracked stones, red eye stones, I think it is.
Yeah, you see, I thought this would be great, and so on the Soul Level 1 playthrough I'm doing at the moment, I made myself a Dark Wraith, so I've got the red eye orb, so I've unlimited ability to invade. Invaded the first person, dropped I think a Proud Soul, something like that, and they picked it up, did a little jump, and I just didn't have the heart to actually attack them, so I waved and then just separation crystalled out of there. That's the first and only time I've ever invaded in the game, and I don't think I have it in me. I just can't be that mean. Even because some people will drop something as a sort of, here you go, and now I'm going to take your life, and it was right next to a bonfire as well, so the guy would have got his souls back, or person would have got their souls back, but still just couldn't bring myself to do it.
One of the funniest ones I saw in I think it was a PvP video this week, was somebody had dropped something on the floor, and the host sort of went to pick it up, and the invader had actually climbed somewhere above, and when the host sort of got to pick the thing up, they dropped and did a two-handed smash and killed them, and I was like, that was some sort of Wile E. Coyote motherfucker. Uber Roadrunner. But I'm sort of attempting a Soul Level 1 playthrough at the minute, and most of that's been monkeying around in the Berg and sort of helping new players and stuff. And when I've advanced a little bit, I've gone down to the depths, and all of a sudden there are no marks on the floor, and all of a sudden I'm feeling like desperately lonely. And I remember seeing James's tweet earlier on about Ornstein the Smough, I think it was.
Yeah.
And just thinking, Soul level 1. What? And I have no idea how I'm going to tackle those jokers.
I'm worried for you. I mean, I've been playing Demons again with Sean yesterday, trying to catch up with him because he was like level 25. I thought, right, I need to get to level 13 to join you. So I kind of ran through as fast as I could. I went straight to 4-1, and it was really, really hard in ways that it hasn't been hard before because I've leveled up first. I cannot conceive how you can do an Orlando on Soul level 1. It just doesn't fit into my head. Because you don't even have bows, do you?
No, you can't use a bow. No. But in all honesty, you run past everything you do not have to kill. That's the simplest way I can put it. So giants at the top of the staircase, run past them. All the Batwing demons, run past them. The only person you have to stop for, and that includes gargoyles, by the way, run past them as well. Don't even think about it. Come off the lift, straight left, drop down, up the buttress, and just run past all of the painting guardians as well. Because oh yeah, you run across the rafters. But if you get to the corner where the rafters are 90 degrees, if you stand just in front of that curved bit that comes around the corner, they'll jump at you and fall to their death.
All right.
Yeah. The little quirks you find out when you're eking your way along with your shield up, and they just do that. You think, hang on, could I do this every time? Yes,
but
you can.
You've done a speedrun as well, haven't you?
I have, yeah. I did 1.9 speedruns, because the first one I got all the way to Gwyn and realised that I didn't have the ability to wield the Black Knight Halberd with one hand, and really I couldn't get the timing down on parrying him with the shield, switching to two hands and then attacking him. So I scrapped that and started again, which sounds ridiculous to scrap a run when you're that close to Gwyn, but it took me 1 hour 42 minutes to complete it. So yeah,
bloody hell.
And that was rubbish compared to watching any of the guys who are actual speedrunners, not just an idiot trying it for the first time. The world record's like 54 minutes for any. No, you don't have to do all bosses. You don't have to, do anything other than just get to the end of the game.
But I mean, I love Dark Souls to pieces, but I am no way good enough to even approach any of that stuff. I saw some PvP stuff earlier on this week, and the people that were fighting were going into the menu and switching out rings and weapons in the menu while they were playing. I'm just thinking, what is this multitasking stuff? Normally it's me just sort of gripping L1 and holding my shield up and just thinking, oh, they're going to hit me now. Yeah, I've not done much PvP at all. I consider it an absolute triumph if I just manage to survive long enough to get 1 or 2 hits in. But I mean, to be fair, usually I do okay in PvP if it's someone invading me. But I'd never actually go to a PvP area and purposefully try and engage, because it reminds me a bit of Gears of War multiplayer, where everyone playing that game knows exactly how to roll and shotgun you in the face before you even knew they were there. And it's a bit like that in PvP. They know exactly how to approach a run at you and then turn on the spot and backstab you before you've even actually known what they're doing,
I hate guys like that so much. I just want a fair fight. Is that too much to ask? And I don't mind losing to a fair fight. Like, you think, fair enough, good fight. You beat me, you were better.
Yeah, you both bow, you both approach one another, you both inch towards one another, pretend you're going to hit one another and don't, and then eventually one of you falls off the edge. Yeah, that's a fair fight in my book. Yeah. That's how it goes.
I did learn the term this week. I mentioned this to James as well. I did learn the term housewife in Dark Souls, which is apparently when you go for people that are wearing Mask of the Mother. Going for housewives.
See, this kind of stems from Giant Dad is someone in the giant outfit wearing Mask of the Father, and it's like a known it's a known PvP like cosplay almost. That's the character you play as. And then people have done giant families, so everyone in giant armor, but with each of the 3 masks on, because obviously you can pull 2 people in as summons. And so clearly the mother has become housewife in this rather twisted family scenario.
You know something? If I ever stumbled upon sort of that kind of invasion, or even part of that kind of invasion, I think I'd be laughing too hard to even sort of retain any kind of fight whatsoever.
Yeah, I had one in the Painted World where it was it basically popped up and said you have been invaded by, or rather, Dark Spirit. Oswald the Pardoner has invaded, and for a split second I thought, hang on, that's not an NPC invasion. But sure enough, up walks Oswald the Pardoner, and that's actually lore-wise a really great area for him to be in. And I ended up having this fight with him. I think he took the hump a bit because I used drank some Estus halfway through. But as far as I'm concerned, if someone invades me, I'm not subscribing to their PvP rules. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'll use Estus if I want to use Estus.
Yeah. Well, there's a Tumblr, isn't there, with full of people who have sent abuse following Dark Souls battles, saying like, "Oh, why did you use that weapon? I'll beat you in this fight," or it just baffles me, that sort of stuff.
Because with Demons and Dark Souls, there's kind of a sort of established range of levels at which you get to, and that's the level you do PvP at, and there's certain areas you go to for that. You know, Ulasil Township is definitely one of them. Anor Londo is another, and these are the kind of established areas where people tend to do PvP. Undead Burg, of course. So for Dark Souls, I think it's around about 120 to 130, somewhere around like that sort of range. And so people get into this mindset when they're always fighting people who are there to do PvP that there is this code of conduct. But I'm sorry, if you invade my game, I'm doing everything I can tooth and claw to bring you down.
You use your rules in your world, sir. This is my town.
Ulasil Township sort of brings back sort of 2 memories. The first one when I was there, and it was like for the very first time, I was like, the bonfire's not working. Why is there a fog gate up? Is the game looking for someone to actively hurt me? Yes, they are.
Yes, they are.
Yep,
I had a point where I was at a bonfire and I was just trying to level up. Would it let me level up? No. Sat down, it stood me back up again. Quit out the game. Come back in. Sit down, stood me back up again. Quit out the game. Because it does actually allow you, just at the point where it started kicking you off the bonfire, maybe even before the fog walls come up, it allows you to quit out of the game still, so that option on the menu is still there. Obviously before it's finally matched you with someone, but yeah, it can get really frustrating if you happen to be human.
There was the thing that was mentioned on Bonfireside Chat as well, with regards to Ulasil Township, that everybody fights in that little area, and yet the Battle of Stoicism is just round the corner. It's the equivalent of there being a racetrack and people doing donuts in the car park.
yeah, very
They're
much.
racing just outside of the racetrack.
Yeah. They just want to be close enough to sort of rub it in the face of whoever at From Software took all the time to put that into the game.
Well, I think it's, with regards to that extra content anyway, for me it's my favourite stuff in the game. But lore-wise, you realise how it really does put a pretty pink bow on and ties things so beautifully together.
It's incredible. Yeah,
and the fact that they didn't just lump that into the original game and just think, "Oh, sod it, we'll chuck it in." That it was important enough that seemingly they wanted to try and make it work even before the PC version was announced, or you could tell it was a little bit special for them, and that comes across.
Yeah, definitely. I think everything about it. The moment you first walk out of the sanctuary, the Ulasil Sanctuary, and realise that you've been in the area where you fought Sif, and you're now walking back out across that bridge, is just, it's incredibly powerful to me.
That didn't click for me for ages. I kind of recognised the forest, but didn't realise
as soon as I saw that
aspect.
bridge. It was just the
that
bridge.
clicked immediately. I was like, "Oh crap, we're here! Oh crap, oh crap, we're here!"
And some of those battles, I mean, the Artorius fight is just for the lore to have built him up and built him up and built him up, and then to walk into that battle and you see him
and you're still not ready.
Yeah,
No.
that triple hit's phenomenal. His arm's broken.
You didn't notice that, did you, for ages?
No, you pointed that out to me.
Yeah,
Do you know why
it's...
you know why I noticed it? Because it took me 36 tries.
Oh yeah.
And it wasn't that it was cheap; it's that he was legitimately better than I was.
Yeah, the scary thing about that, and I joke about this on Twitter with a bunch of people, is can you imagine what it would have been to fight him when he had 2 arms and both legs didn't look like they were splintered pieces of wood?
Oh, jeez.
Because if you look at his ankles as well, they're just wasted away, ready to snap. And yet he jumps around that environment and makes a mockery of you. It's so fun.
But this is the thing. He laid down that shield to protect Sif.
Yeah.
If he hadn't laid down that shield, there's no way he would have been defeated.
No.
Plain and simple. And Manus has put him in that arena and just thrown so much at him constantly that it's driven him mad. And I think he's such a tragic and brilliant hero, and there's almost a little element of kind of Obi-Wan in there as well. That Elizabeth hints, both Elizabeth and Dusk hint that you are Artorius, or you are the descendant of Artorius, that you've been there before, and maybe he foresaw that someone else was going to walk through time and right the wrongs that he couldn't.
Well, and especially at the end, it's kind of when you go back and go back to Elizabeth, and then if you go and visit Dusk again, once you come back out, it's basically hinted at that she recognizes in you something of Artorius. But the point in that is that you defeated Manus and freed her, but then history rewrote that as it was Artorius that did it, because it a bit like, I suppose, Dark Knight or something. It needed to be Artorius that did that so that his memory wasn't torn down.
I kind of thought within that regard that because she was more or less catatonic when you defeat Manus, that she believes it was Artorius that saved her.
Yeah,
and by
that's
going,
why she thinks
by going
that
back into the past, you almost sort of I don't know, without glamour, restored his reputation as the man that transcended time and space to right wrongs, and he did it.
Yeah,
and you're saving his honor, a man that had lowered that shield to protect Sif, that had
absolutely
that had done the bravest act.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of defeating Artorius, I'm doing my second Soul Level 1 run through, and I'm doing all of the bosses, and I'm doing it without pyromancies and without summons. Blimey. Artorius is incredibly difficult. I'm at Manus at the moment, but I wish I'd captured Artorius, but I didn't. It took me a bunch of tries. But you realise that actually your shield is useless, first of all, which is great to know going in there first time as a level whatever player you happen to be. Yeah. Stick your shield on your back and make sure it's Grass Crest, because that's all the use it's going to be to you. And you just realise that it's dodging, and you're always dodging until you know you've got a safe shot to take it at him.
Blimey.
Even two-handed with a lightning reinforced club +5, you're doing, it's about 200 damage, which sounds to someone who's starting the game, wow, 200 damage. When you realise that it's against Artorius, you might as well be spitting peas at him. It really is ridiculous.
See, that sounds mad, but I'm now really, really worried for you for Calamite.
Oh man! See, Manus, I'm at the point where I've fought him. I think I've tried him twice, and I've got him down to about half health, where he starts spitting his magic forward. And I've kind of got into the swing of things. The problem is that you have time to hit him, you have time to heal, but if you make 2 mistakes on the trot, you're toast, because he doesn't hit as hard as Artorius, but he doesn't let up in the way Artorius. Occasionally, Artorius will be the other side of the arena, and you can probably get away with healing without him getting an attack off at you, but Manus just doesn't let up. He's absolutely relentless. And Calamite. It's the same thing, but again, it's just knowing the attack patterns, and I really don't yet. I will do by the end.
Attack patterns.
Calamite just doesn't telegraph at all. He's just like straight into stuff, and that's one of the things that I really love about him as a boss battle. That normally there's nods and winks that a boss is going to go into doing something, and the Calamete's just like, right,
just does it.
That, right, I'll fly across, and then I'll turn straight into that sweep attack, and I'll fire the dark magic sort of straight across, and it's just magnificent, and he looks superb as well. So that's a dragon and a half.
Yeah. I love his entrance into the game is just a complete redux of the Hellkite Drake in Undead Burg. He just lands on that bridge, but unlike the Hellkite Drake, who doesn't even look at you, he just lands and then flies off. Calamite looks right at you.
Yeah.
So intimidating.
Did anyone here? Did anyone stare him down, or did you fight the urge to run away as well? Like, I ran. I was like, "Oh Jesus Christ, a dragon!"
I was in your game when you first saw Calamite, and you didn't know that he was going to drop at that point.
No, I slightly got scared.
Yeah, you did pant it. I've seen on the PvP videos this week, people invading wearing Calamite's ring. So they're that fearless that they're inviting you to do damage.
They're wearing the Calamity ring.
Yeah.
I really laughed when that ring dropped first time I beat Calamity. It's just you pick it up and you think, oh, Calamity ring, that sounds cool, looks awesome. I'm never putting this on. Why?
Some people will just put it on without reading the description and will just go, God, I'm getting worse at this.
To be honest, I can't imagine anyone being in the situation at that point in the game where they just put on anything they like willy-nilly without thinking about whether it's going to help them or not.
Very carefully reading the item descriptions first.
Exactly.
Every single
and then
time.
Going to the wiki to check that it does what it says it does.
And it didn't just lie.
Yeah.
But this comes back to the way that the story is in Dark Souls. And that you can play through that first run of the game, and you can pretty much enjoy the game for what it is. It doesn't thrust cutscenes on you, or massive CGI bits. It just lets you enjoy the game. But the point where you start correlating the smallest bits, whether it be the two characters are from the same place, or you perhaps look on a lore video, or you start reading some of the descriptions. The game's got you for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
Remember the Petrus thing?
Oh, don't even start me on that guy.
Freaking worked out right at the end. It's mad.
Yeah, absolutely. Petrus is absolutely the most vile character in Dark Souls. I've put together. I've not quite yet finished putting in the text that's going over it, but I've put together a video where I almost don't want to tell you what I've done. Basically, it's about 27 different characters I've dressed up as, all of them killing Petrus.
Fantastic!
Oh, yeah.
I thought I'd got this. I've got a couple of characters who in like New Game Plus and just in New Game Plus, the other one, who I'd worked out that between them I'd got loads of different armor sets and weapons, and I just thought, Petrus is alive in both of these. I now know because I'm trying to work out how to do speed runs. I know how to do save states for Dark Souls. So I just took a save state of each of those characters and then kept reloading it and just going as a different character and killing him. And hopefully it's going to come together pretty well. I'm just trying to decide whether I score it all with just a few different songs, or I've got like themed songs for each of them. That in theory I think
this is going to be
fit pretty well. So like Leroy, I figured you've got to have faith as his song, and Solaire, Walking on Sunshine, that kind of stuff. So it's hopefully it'll all come together. I need to get back to editing that because, as you can imagine, it's quite a bit of editing work. Yeah. But yeah, Petrus is awful. Just the worst character in the game. Everyone in that game, including Smo, hates Petrus. I am convinced of it.
Because I remember when we were podcasting, and Paddy had something happen in his game with Petrus that I hadn't, and we sort of looked it up on the wiki. And honestly, I can't think of another character that made me more angry.
No. Yeah, I mean, you think of the worst characters in that game, Smo is right up there, clearly. Absolute monster of a being. And you think of any of the patches, you don't even put in the same league as Petrus and Lautrec's the only one who comes close, and even Lautrec hates Petrus for who he is.
But what's weird, I kind of think Lautrec might actually not be a bad guy.
Well, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because he's been sent by is it Fina?
Yes,
it's Fina is his goddess, isn't it? And he's bringing back essentially sacrifices for her. He's doing kind of similar to what the Channelers are doing for Seath. And yeah, I mean, he's not a nice guy, but I don't think he particularly tries to hide it all that well. I mean, I know first time through the game, most people get done by him, as it were. You
see him and he goes,
yeah, I mean, he's got a maniacal laugh. If you don't realise he's a bad guy, yeah, okay, you might get blindsided by the fact that he kills Anastasia and hightails it to Anor Londo, but nonetheless, you kind of knew he was going to stab you in the back, a bit like Patches, to be honest.
But he's a religious sort of fundamentalist, isn't he? He's incredibly focused. Even his armour, those sort of flicks on the shoulder, so the goddess can reach down and grab him.
And the hug on the torso.
It makes me laugh that we all felt angered when he killed the firekeeper under the Firelink Shrine, and yet he was imprisoned for killing the one in Undead Parish, and the first thing you do when you find that was like, cheers, thanks, I'll have that.
You quite happily pick that up, yeah.
So I'm wondering if we're going to see more of kind of his faith in Dark Souls 2, because it's never really touched upon other than
it's not. Yeah,
his own.
He's an oddity because I mean he's from Kareem, isn't he? The same as Oswald and. I think there's one other character. I can't quite bring him to mind who might be Kareem. But the same as Oswald. And Oswald obviously doesn't follow Fina. He follows Velka. And the Painted World is all about Velka. I think at the moment the supposition from the footage we've seen for Dark Souls 2 is that it seems to be something to do with the Painted World, or at least the world that the Painted World represents. In that's all to do with Velka, and it's to do with the occult and the magics that can harm the gods. And Priscilla was put there because she's a crossbreed god and dragon almost, I think, is supposed to be what she is. And so there's this whole thing about maybe Dark Souls 2 is going to revolve around that, and that seems to stem mostly from the bridge scene. And the fact that it's been pointed out that bridge has been seen before, and the one very notable rope bridge that we've seen is at the very beginning of the Painted World. So,
I was wondering if that was the place where kind of Seath was either conducting his experiments or dumped them, and I was wondering in Dark Souls 2 if you that's sort of what you do. You free the Painted World from Seath's grip, and then that's where it's used, and possibly where the painting is sealed away in Anor Londo, so nobody else can get it.
Yeah, I mean it's certainly possible because there's a lot of occult magic items there, and a lot of Velka's items are there, and Priscilla herself was put there. It seemed to be that Gwyn put anything there that could potentially be a threat to him. But yeah, I think it's very possible that the Raven Demons are possibly byproducts of Seath's experiments, and obviously there's an undead dragon in there as well. So yeah.
Well, yeah, it was swarming with dragons when you see that Dark Souls 2 footage as well, isn't it? So, and you've got the bone dragon that sort of
inside that museum that looks a little bit like the Natural History Museum.
Yes, it certainly does. The thing I'm not sure about is whether, as you say, it's going to be the Painted World being explored more and potentially opened out into Lordran or one of the other kingdoms. But the other possibility is that the Painted World is a magical painting. It's a painting that was created to contain all of this stuff that got put into it, essentially. So the question then becomes, is it the painted world, i.e. the painting itself, that we're going to be exploring in Dark Souls 2, or is it the world that the painting was of, if you see what I mean?
Almost kind of like a Kandor is in sort of Superman, but it's the city in a bottle.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
How about this? What if in the course of the game you have a hand in turning that place into the painted world? What if you're working? What if, say, you're working for Gwyn?
What if you are Gwyn?
Ooh.
There's so many possibilities, but I think the most interesting thing is that time, obviously in Dark Souls and with the DLC, time is always up in the air and flexible, and therefore all these things are certainly possible, but equally well they could do something completely other just with the mere notion of the realm that the painted world was of being explored. So yeah, it's lots of possibilities, and what they did with the DLC fills me with a lot of hope that they'll be able to do something, even if it's not tied that closely to the original, just something very interesting with it.
How do you even begin to write this sort of stuff? Because normally, even if you're looking at a Final Fantasy game and it's got, pages and pages and pages of dialogue and possibilities, the storytelling in Dark Souls is above and beyond anything I've seen in gaming, and I've certainly not seen people as captivated and genuinely fascinated in all my time in gaming. I've just not. I mean, but perhaps I'm not within the the correct pockets to obsess on different stuff. But
I think you're right. I think the only things that I can think of that kind of remind me of Dark Souls in that way, or rather Dark Souls reminds me of Eco and Shadow of the Colossus. I think in those you're very aware that you're in this world, especially in Eco, because you've got the level design that allows you to see places you've been or places you're going to from different parts of the castle. But also just you get a very strong sense that this is a very old world or old part of a world that you're in, and there is a lot of history to it, and you're trying to work out what's going on just by taking in your environment more than anything else.
With regards to Eco, I would recommend the novel.
All right.
There's the person that's written it is a lady called Mayuki Miyabe, who wrote my favourite ever book, which is Brave Story, and she does a book based upon Eco, and it's a stunning read. It's an absolutely stunning read. I loved it to pieces. So if you enjoyed the game, you might enjoy the book as well.
Yeah. I didn't realise there was a book, which shows how much I know.
Well, I'm a huge fan of Miyabe's stuff, and she tends to do either sort of urban crime stuff or occasionally fantasy, and the fantasy stuff is really grounded in reality. So, but it doesn't lose a sense of awe. There's a wonderful sense of contrast in there. And Brave Story turned my universe upside down. I thought it was phenomenal. And Eco's it's a really good book. I really enjoyed it. So
excellent. I'll look into those. This sounds very interesting.
I've been looking at a few Dark Souls 2 bits that have been on the net. A few that I stumbled upon, but odd ones that had little bits in there that I'd not heard before, which sort of raised the odd eyebrow. So I'll throw some of these out there and see where the muse lies. But
fire.
Yeah, I was watching one. It was a Rurikon vid based on his playing the game at E3 and speaking to a representative of Bamco as well. And one of the interesting things that was mentioned there was the character classes, because he said that according to the guy at Namco Bandai, that the game would ask you a series of questions before you started. It didn't go into what those questions were, but depending on how you answered those questions, the game would generate a character for you.
Ooh,
it's interesting.
Sort of like the goat in Fallout 3, kinda.
I don't know. It's been ages since I played Fallout.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, because you go through the test, don't you? And it sort of compiles from you perform in that.
Yeah.
And then you decide to do completely the opposite. But but it tries.
It'd be really interesting if they did go down that route with Dark Souls 2, because you might have a character in armor that you might not ordinarily have chosen if you were if you were given a list of classes and you worked on them from there, saying, I'm gonna do a knight build, or I'm going to do a mage, or it'd be interesting if they threw this character together for you, and I think it will probably uncover maybe new favourite weapons across the fan base quicker than would normally be there, because somebody might have to use one for the start of their game.
Yeah.
I mean, the revelations you had with the club. I mean,
yeah, the bunny stick, as we ended up naming it,
the Happy Smash.
But the reinforced club and the regular club, I wouldn't have gone near those in a.
No, you wouldn't think it. No, yeah. But once you're forced to use them, you realise that actually having a very simple move set, you get to know those swings and you get to know what that weapon can do. And especially if you've got the reinforced club, the fact that you fight the stray demon and the demon fire sage is great, because fine well that you're going to go to town on them and get bleeding damage as well.
But that R2 attack, as soon as that first kicked in, I was like, what?
Do you remember the first time we did Darkroot together? And the big stone giants that were going down in like one hit. Like,
I think I was two-handing it, and there'd been a lot of sort of poncing around and sort of taking little stabs at them previously, and then it was just...
Wow. I think what
full swing.
What made me realise is that my first Soul Level 1 run-through, I farmed like nobody's business around Undead Parish to try and get a Baldur shield, because that's the shield I wanted to use. I realised that with a one-handed R2 attack, you can break through the shield block of the hollows, the hollow soldiers and hollow warriors render.
Yeah.
And that's just great, because you don't have to wait for them to attack. You don't have to kick and then attack them. You just jump at them, and as long as you know the jump distance, you're absolutely fine. That weapon proves to be exactly what you need on a Soul Level 1 playthrough.
Do you remember when that first happens, though? Where you first knock their guard away? It's like,
I can do that?
It's a Christmas present in the form of a swing.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's great.
Well, what I'm hoping for with Dark Souls 2, I'm hoping that a lot of the different weapons will have like different movesets. Because, I mean, to be honest, a lot of the swords are swords. They have a kind of swordy feel, a couple of swings, the odd stab, but nothing really different. It's only when, my favourite weapon for the whole run, basically, once I got it, I stuck with it for the whole game, was Kellogg's Fury Sword.
Yes.
Because I made that and I was like, this is exactly what I want.
Yeah,
perfect.
Great.
And it's got such a weird moveset compared to like the other swords. It's kind of got flips and spins and all sorts of kind of cool attacks. And
the running attack on it's great.
Oh, the little sort of upwards flick.
Yeah.
It's really cool. And like the one you can do immediately after a roll, you sort of roll and then do a little sort of twirl.
Yeah.
A little fiery twirl. And that sort of thing, yes please, give me some more of that. And I want to see a bit more diversity in how like big swords and small swords and little babby daggers do. And I want to see more cool attacks. Is what I want. I think that's why I stayed with it. It's why I stayed with it so long, because it made me. I liked to watch it spin around.
Yeah,
that's there though, isn't it? A lot of the folks that have had hands on have said that the different weapons and even the different armors are wildly different from the combat in Dark Souls, which is really exciting.
Well, they talked about and had to retool a couple of things, because they wanted bows and crossbows to be more usable mid-combat. So it seems like there's an option from the demo video that they put out way back when IGN had the kind of interview and exclusive gameplay footage. They showed that actually you can use a crossbow kind of on the fly. You don't have to rely on a lock-on, and that can be problematic. But the other thing they said was they want dual wielding to be a genuine option rather than kind of a half an option, really, where you're actually just using it as a parrying weapon. So whether that's the case of it just changes the animations and moves, and if you put an attack weapon in your left hand, in your offhand, or not, I don't know, but it should be interesting to see. So it at least means that all weapons should be a bit more flexible because they have to be able to be used in both hands. So.
Well, in Matt Lee's video, he said that with regards to bows, that your bow, I don't know if it's one bow in particular, but it's got 2 quivers. So
right.
you can kind of shoot quick and short if you want, or you can shoot more powerfully and with a long shot. And I was like, that sounds great. And
do you think that'd be like mapping that to R1 or R2, perhaps?
I don't know. I don't know if they'd be. I think the intimation was that they were separate slots in the same way as you could swap out sort of a left-handed or a right-handed weapon. But I don't know if that's perhaps if you were just a bow guy. But mind you have got 3 slots, haven't you now? So
is that being confirmed? I've not seen any of that stuff yet. I thought when they showed the first sort of stuff off, they were showing off like, he's got like 8 different weapons, and I thought that's kind of cool.
The interesting thing that I heard on this Rurikon video was the weight of your character depends on how far you roll, not just the speed or sort of a common or garden fat roll. So if you're lighter, you will jump further than if you had a heavier build, which is fantastic.
And the animations in Dark Souls kind of look like that, but practically it never worked because you do kind of leap a bit on a light roll, whereas a heavy roll, you can just fall into it rather than
fall down and break your hip.
So, yeah.
They're even saying with kind of the attack frames as well that if somebody say does an R2 attack with a Zweihander and sort of chops straight downwards, that with the attack frames, it's whatever you do, it's likely to connect with you. But they were saying that the attack frames are smaller on Dark Souls 2, so that if you jump out the way and it doesn't connect, it won't connect with you. And that the weapon tracking is more that you need to anticipate where your enemy's going to be when you hit, rather than you hitting and it connecting even if your enemy isn't there anymore.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. That's going to be so much fun in fights and stuff.
I tell you one person who's going to hate that. Havel is not going to like Dark Souls 2 because his weapon tracking is awesome.
But I think there's the other side of it, that if somebody is good at anticipating and that becomes part of them using a heavier weapon, when they connect, you are stuffed.
Yeah.
They've also mentioned as well that it's with regards to backstabs, that the enemies will look to backstab you, that their AI is far better, and if you heal, they will run at you and try and get a shot in.
Oh god!
Because occasionally, I mean, the Balder Knights are the only ones I can think of who actually seem to purposely do that. They're the only ones who
you're right,
routinely parry you. But they also, if you back off far enough, it may be just distance that's the trigger. But far too often when I try to take an Estus flask, they do come at you and they will just prod you at the last minute. Artorius as well seems to... it may be because your shield goes down, maybe that's the trigger rather than the Estus, but there are a couple of enemies that seem to have AI sets that just allow them to seem to be a bit more adaptable to what you're doing, but I think it's kind of fudged in Dark Souls, whereas if they're designing it from the outset in Dark Souls 2, maybe every enemy will do that. Speaking of which, if I get the chance to play Dark Souls 2 demo at Eurogamer, I almost want to try and backstab one of those turtle knights just
to see what happens.
I know what's going to happen. I'm going to get flattened by it, and it'd just be so funny.
Well, one of the things that I saw about backstabs is that you're now not invincible when you're doing one, that you're actually open to attack. And someone was saying, I think it was on the Sunlight Blade video, where he was summing up a lot of the new stuff, that the first move isn't the backstab, that you use the very base of a sword to smash someone into the back so they drop to their knees.
Right.
and
Yeah.
it's then you follow through with the backstab, but that leaves you completely open to being attacked. And there's also a way of getting out of somebody trying to backstab you once they've started into it. I don't know if that's going to be based on move sets or how light or how heavy you are, but that just sounds fascinating to me. It sounds really clever.
I'm looking for shields on the back to stop backstabs or severely reduce their effectiveness. That's what I want.
Yeah, that was a rumor I'd heard as well. Yeah,
it was funny because that's what people wanted, and then they showed off the first video and said, "Yep, we've put it in. Not for you though, for the enemies." Oh, great.
For that big turtle guy,
Yeah, we heard what you wanted, sort of.
Absolutely.
One of the best things that I heard today, which apparently comes from Varty Video, but I've not heard it directly from him. It was via the Sunlight Blade video, was that the producers of Dark Souls have actually been looking into different fears and trying to incorporate them into the game, like fear of heights, fear of the dark, fear of spiders, fear of like tons and tons of stuff, and they're going to play into phobias. Phobias are going to be a really big part of the game.
Are they putting a clown in it? Because
it's good to know they just stumbled upon those things in Demon Souls and Dark Souls. Then they didn't actually intentionally go for it. So it'd be interesting to see what they can manage now that they're actually going after those things.
Yeah, that does scare me a bit, especially with memories of Tomb of the Giants.
Tomb of the Giants, first time you go in there, if you don't have a light source, is unreal.
I remember getting through Tomb of the Giants and eventually, and going into the lighter areas thereafter and getting through to Nito. And at that point, I didn't have a faith weapon. I didn't have an intelligence weapon. I'd swapped it out for the demon spear, which was my go-to. And I got to Nito, and I was severely panicking because those skeletons wouldn't go down. He was in the distance. And I was so shell-shocked by that battle, I literally had to heal for about a month. I just couldn't get my head round sort of going through all of that again. It's as if I'd been to war and come back. And it took me a good while to get the shoulders again, to rebuild with concrete cojones to be able to go back and take on those dogs again.
Take a swig of man juice.
See, the ridiculous thing about that is now when I run that, I run it without a light source and I just run past everything. And actually, if you're doing a speed run, what you do is you just tank that fight, you stick on stone armor, you two-hand your weapon, and you just go to town on Nito, and he actually kills the skeletons, and they then reanimate. He kills them again, they reanimate, and all you have to do is be able to soak up the damage they're dealing to you. Because, of course, Nito does just about nothing when you're up close, until he does his AoE, and you tank that, and then swig an Estus. It's bananas to realise, actually, if you know your route through Tomb of the Giants, it takes about 10 seconds to get through that dark section before you get out into the tunnel, where you would fight Leroy if you were human.
There's a part of me that's just stilled all breath, because going through Tomb of the Giants, I think one of the things that Dark Souls is fantastic at is sound. Yeah. And you can be in Tomb of the Giants, and you're walking along, even if you've got the tiniest light source, and it does that great thing whereby, you can have your lantern, but you're gonna have to swap it out for your shield.
Yeah, you're not allowed to protect yourself.
Yeah. But even then, when you're kind of going along and you hear that, of those dogs, you're like, what?
It does a really great job.
The worst with me is seeing an arrow just sort of stick in the ground near you, and you think, where the fuck did that come from?
Yeah.
It's just blackness over there.
Yeah.
It's absolute mastery.
Yeah. No, it's actually quite. It's never fun, but it's really liberating to run through that place without a light source. Know the route you take so that first dog, doesn't actually attack you, and then you go through that fog gate. You run across to where the archer is, roll down there, roll a couple more times, and you're out on the path where Leroy would attack you. And it's just done, and you get to the end of it and think, please let me defeat Nito, because I just don't want to have to do that again. But
That just sounds like some sort of Benny Hill video where all the monsters are chasing you, and there's some sort of sinister version of like.
Basically, yeah, basically.
That's just what?
Yeah, no, it's unbelievable. It sort of robs Dark Souls of, we were talking about difficulty, and it's not really that difficult. Yeah. But even when it's not that difficult, if you've got a character build that's not quite the best character build to be wandering into the Needle fight with, you still have your heart in your mouth. You still feel that tension. And Soul Level 1's great for doing that as well. And then you watch someone doing like a sub 1 hour speed run, and it just opens your eyes to, if you know what you're doing in Dark Souls, it kind of isn't a threat anymore almost, and the tension then becomes, oh god, I'm going to screw up. You start getting worried about you're going to fuck up, and you're going to miss the juke skip, or you're going to die to Nito and have to run that whole thing again. Because if you're doing, the guys who speedrun, they don't take bonfires, so if they die, they're back half the world away, and they've got to run down again.
I tried watching a speedrun, and there's a part in my head which just goes, "What are you doing? Why you left them alone? And why? You'll hurt yourself." This degree of kind of panic. I think that probably issues to my playstyle, which is sort of very carefully going forward, and especially on the first time that I played it. I think most people tank on their first time, but man, in Undead Parish Undead Burg, the first time that I played it, I got a Black Knight sword dropped pretty early and just couldn't use it, and literally farmed souls for about 3 years around Undead Burg to be able to use that. But when I got it, when I finally picked it up, I sailed through about 3 or 4 sections because I was overpowered.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what happens to people with the Drake Sword as well. They'll go and buy the bow, they'll buy like 300 arrows, and they'll stand in the spot that the person / video told them to stand and shoot at the tail until they get the Drake Sword. And then you sail through the game, and not sailing through the Quelag fight, but kind of. And then you get to the man serpents and realize you've screwed up because you don't know what you're doing with them, and suddenly you're not killing it and killing every enemy in one hit. You realize you're in trouble. So that's definitely a problem with getting a high-powered weapon.
But it is a nice crutch if you are having
if you're having trouble. Absolutely, If you just want something to ease things a little bit and just get you through a few areas, absolutely. Yeah.
But I had no idea that was even there the first time I played it. And I've often mused as to, when the previews start coming out for Dark Souls 2, when it starts getting really, really close, we're talking sort of January, February next year, part of me just thinks I'm going to go dark on it, So it arrives in my hands and it's just unspoiled.
I'm worried because I do reviews for a friend of mine, and I've asked for it. And I'm kind of worried that I'm going to get it early, and then no one will be able to help me.
You should be worried, because if you get that game before James was saying this on Twitter with regards to if you get into the beta and I don't.
It's just
I do. There'll be heaven and hell will collide.
I can see you forcibly coming down to where I live, forcing your way in my house, and just pushing me off my sofa.
Well, it was Portsmouth has been eradicated.
Yeah, no.
So it's going to be at Play Expo in Manchester. Are you going to that one?
When's that?
October
the
12th, 13th. I'm going.
I'll try and get to that, actually.
I've heard a rumble it might be there, but I don't know for definite. Because
I'm hoping that they bring it to the Game City event in Nottingham, because they brought Ni no Kuni last year. So I'm hoping they bring it there, but I've forgotten about that.
Yeah, they do seem to be trying to get it out there, and it's at Eurogamer, so Namco Bandai UK are clearly aware that UK expos are a decent shout to be able to get the game out there, but let's hope they take it to other events as well. yeah, like I'm umming and ahhing over whether I really want to play that and whether I actually want to get into the beta when it comes out early October. But
you can say that from standing outside the circle and trying to provide a very chin scratching and an intelligent version. But if you log on to your PS3 and it's like this is your beta ticket for October the 12th, your stomach's gonna knot and it's gonna be like Christmas Eve at 11:59.
What I'm actually hoping is that it turns out, and it would make sense given it's supposed to be a beta, not a demo. It would kind of make sense for it to be some kind of multiplayer beta where it's just trying to see how the network code's working and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Whether it's matchmaking okay, whether it's coping with server load, etc., the usual stuff. And that'd kind of be brilliant because it would give me a chance just to practice, see what the game plays like without actually spoiling any of the.
See, I'd like to see an area maybe the size of the Undead Asylum, like sort of separate entity by itself, where they say, right, here's a load of summoning things, go on, have a go.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be.
Bring in a bro, yo.
It'd be cool if they did sort of a little prequel to the game in the same way as Dragon's Dogma did. A bit that's not in the game, but lore-wise is set before it, where you could wander through, you could get your feel for fighting the enemies, and you could try different weapons as they dropped, and then perhaps as you got over, say, level 5, that's the point where you get a drop for an invasion.
Yeah,
and people could invade after that, so you could get used to the mechanics, and it would also mean that when the game actually arrived, that you'd have a pretty good clue as to how to fight.
And this is going to be. See, I'm interested for this as well because this is really. I mean, this is the first time that Demons or Dark Souls has ever really had a demo of any sort.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, there's been no free way to play it really. To demo, because that's probably what held me off getting Demons for so long. Is that I'm a demo man. I like to play things before I buy them. Even when I rented Demons the first time, I rented it, played it for a little bit, and just didn't get on with it, and sent it back. And a friend of ours, Sean, lent it to me a little while ago, and something in it clicked, and I got it suddenly. I think getting it into people's hands and letting them, have a bit of free time with it would be amazing. Give out lots of beta tickets.
I think what's helped with Dark Souls is the fact that it's hit so many sales of late. Whether it be Steam sales or Amazon in the US sort of kicked out a pretty decent price drop at the same point where the Dark Souls 2 trailer hit at the big awards in January. And I think a few people have kind of gone into it with like, oh yeah, bollocks, I'll give it a go. And I think a few people have really gotten into it because of that cheap access point.
Yeah, I think it helps as well that there's a lot of people like us who don't shut up about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And getting Demon Souls onto PlayStation Plus as well is a good shout.
That was a stonker.
Have you seen how many people are playing it though? How many ghosts there are?
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
The
Okay,
return of the servers, I think,
with
is going to be a
Demon
big deal on that.
Going with Demon Souls. Now tomorrow at 7 a.m. UK time is the Sony Japan show. Their pre-TGS show, I think it is, isn't it? They're broadcasting live, and they're going to be subtitling, so I'm going to be getting up very early and watching it. And they said that a big thing or two are coming. Dare we hope for a Demon Souls 2 on Vita?
Just another Demon Souls will kind of flip my wig entirely. It's probably going to be something like Last Guardian, but
it will be.
Part of me just wants to go because who is it at Sony that's been hinting that something's on the way?
It's not Yosh because he does everything.
It's the guy that fell asleep in front of David Cage. I can't think of his name.
Oh wait, it might be Shuhei.
Shuhei Yoshida. Yeah, it's him. No,
I heard
been
quite cheeky around it recently.
Did he not make some comment that he really loved Demon Souls and what the guys at Japan Studio and From did? The only thing I can think of is that yes, Sony have a hand in that because they published Demon Souls and funded some of it, but ultimately they'd have to get sign off from the guys at From Software, who surely don't want to step on the toes of Dark Souls 2, do they really think they can run two essentially or potentially competing products? And I know all of us and everyone we talk to, on the internet or Twitter or wherever, would happily have both in their lives.
Yeah.
But it's just, Dark Souls 2 is getting quite a lot of momentum at the moment, and would a Demon Souls 2 kind of confuse things? I don't know.
Would it take away from it, or would it add to it?
Well, yeah,
because I think the two games could exist sort of hand in hand, and I've often said that I think Demons and Dark are kind of more apples and oranges than people give them credit for. But it's as to whether, I think the main thing is as to whether Sony realise what they've got with Demon Souls, and even at the point where people were going bonkers at it through the Atlas release, they still didn't want to release it in Europe.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And credit to them, Namco Bandai did a great job with the Black Phantom edition. They just perfect way to package that game up and say, look, you've waited 2 years for it, here it is.
Yeah. James, could you imagine just buying lots and lots of versions of Dark Souls and Demon Souls?
I can't imagine ever doing that.
Well,
it's mad.
There's rumours of this chess set edition that's coming for Dark Souls 2 as well.
What?
Yeah, there was somebody that was sculpting the pieces quite some time ago, and he said it was for a chess set edition, and I don't know if that was perhaps for a competition
chess set or
because I think it's the same person that sculpted some statues for Namco Bandai when Dark Souls was first out. But the rumours are that there's going to be this chess set, and literally, I will throw money at that. To have a Dark Souls chess set?
Yeah,
I don't
absolutely
know how to play chess. I don't care. Just give me more of it. Let me add to the pile.
Yeah, absolutely.
You just want to take the pawns and the horses and just look at them.
Basically, yeah. I mean, a sort of bespoke chess set like that, it's display as much as anything. It's not for playing with, really. You play with the plastic set you get from Tesco for £5, and that way if you lose pieces or anything, you're not going to care about it. But no, it's quite something. I'd just be interested to see what they do, because obviously Namco Bandai, I think they did fantastic with the limited editions of Dark Souls, making all pre-orders a limited edition version. When they announced that, I thought that was a great way to go about it, rather than just making it a twice the price version with a statue thrown in or whatever. They actually just added a load of stuff that people wanted and gave it to everyone, which I thought was really good.
If they'd have released that Prepare to Die edition with an Artorius statue like the cover, yeah, I'd have thrown as much money.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm not saying I wouldn't buy a twice the price version for a statue. It's just it's nice that a lot of the stuff that kind of usually comes at a £10-20 premium was thrown in there as an extra, just to as an acknowledgement that fans of Dark Souls want this stuff, or fans of Demon Souls as well. So.
The Americans got a tin, didn't they, on their release? Whereas we got that cardboard box.
We got the cardboard box, yeah.
Yeah, the Americans got a tin, which is one of those things that still echoes at the back of my mind. It's like, you haven't got the tin. I look at the pile. It's like there's something missing. Although there was a version of it that was on Namco Bandai's US site, which came with a map of the Undead Burg and the Undead Asylum and a T-shirt, which still kind of makes me want to go.
I don't have the T-shirt.
Something else that going back to Dark Souls that I saw this week. Vati Video did another 5 things you didn't know about Dark Souls, and there was one in particular which genuinely gobsmacked me, which was if you go down to Lost Izalith and you get bitten by the worms, obviously you get the egg. That forms on your head, and you get half health. Well, apparently, if you stay with that and don't get the egg vermifuge, and you collect 100,000 souls, the egg mask kicks out a worm that bites, and it replaces the kick move.
Oh,
well, that's got to be made up, surely.
Oh.
I've seen footage. This footage on the video.
That sounds like
from your
the
head?
April Fool's joke.
Honestly, it was one of those where I was watching it, and Vati's got like a really, really wonderful tone, and he's saying, if you knew everything on this, feel free to give me a dislike. And I was watching and just went, no. And I genuinely hadn't seen that before. And for the game to get over 2 years into release, and that stuff hadn't been noticed.
Well, but not only it's 2 years into release, but he's already done 10 things you didn't know about Dark Souls videos.
Yeah.
And I don't think there was any videos where I didn't know at least 1 or 2 of the things there, but every video had 4 or 5 things. I was just like, no, no, really.
It makes you wonder how many more things there are that we all don't know.
Yeah.
You've seen that there are a few vids where someone, and I don't know the name of the person, but I can probably find it from my YouTube watch list, is trying to insert previous versions of characters or new characters into the games to show off their movesets. And he's got like the original version of Beatrice was a little girl and sort of a really massive hat, and they're inserting sort of unused versions of characters that are still on, I presume, the PC disc and that were locked away. But one of them is Undead King. Let me just bring this up because he's just got the most amazing armor. Undead King Jareel that somebody found, and he was supposed to be like one of the bosses. And
sorry,
he's
I'm just thinking about Ja Rule.
Yeah, that would be like, you come down to the parish to fight me.
None of us know any Ja Rule songs.
Yeah, the first villain in the game to sing over the top of the music that's there. So it's like, oh, with a whine and a grind, I cut off your head. But his armor's amazing. It's this really, really elaborate sort of gold and orange metallic armor that's huge. But yeah, there's someone that's trying to put that sort of stuff into the game, if just to show off what's there and what's not, and how many of the movesets it will actually react to when hit, and how many it will play into. But yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, no, the things that that this game can still throw up that people don't know about, it does make you wonder. At what point does the developer just come clean and say, "Yeah, here's all the stuff that we know hasn't yet been found about our game"?
I'd love that Bible. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I think a lot of us are looking forward to the English translation of the art. But just
the art book, the art book's worth it just for the art alone, let alone the interview at the end. And I've read or heard a lot of what's in that interview. Sort of second-hand translated, but yeah, it'll be nice to have that interview actually in English. But the art alone is just it's incredible. You sit there and look at the art and just mouth agape at the art. Yeah. Did
you see some of the artwork for Dark Souls 2 before it was pulled by From? There was a lad on the Polygon forums who said that there was a Chinese artist that had been working for From, and this was some of the production artwork, and it got pulled. It got pulled from the site, and by that point, everybody had gotten their hands on it, NeoGAF and various videos and stuff. But it's jaw dropping.
It was the boat. Was it a boat on a hill or something?
Yeah, there was one bit where it was as if there were two ravines, and where you'd normally get a bridge, there was a boat that was a galleon that was sandwiched between the two. And you could just imagine, you're just looking at it going, I've never seen that before, but I want to go there. And you can imagine perhaps you'd have to go to the lower decks, and if there was undead sort of trapped within there, and it'd be just fantastic.
Possibly try not to fall out of the bottom.
But they were really stunning pieces of art, and as to how many were were going to be used or not, I don't know. But the fact that
Yeah.
From put their foot down quite quickly suggests that, because at first we were like, oh, they're nice pieces of art, and it'd be great to think that they're in the game, but it could just be someone that's
it could
trying
be
to
nonsense,
get. Yeah, it could just be someone that's trying to get a job.
noticed.
But he was saying that he got pieces of artwork he designed the character that became the edge cover.
Yeah.
And they showed all of that stuff, but seriously, check out the artwork. It is just amazing. And the thought of realizing those locations and playing into them in the game is just terrifyingly exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of ridiculous that we're 6 months out and all the games and 2 new consoles coming out in between. I'd quite happily just sleep through all of it and get to March. It's not, and I'm not even joking. There's nothing coming out that even touches my anticipation for Dark Souls 2, and that's even knowing that I'm the sort of person who I tend to look less kindly on sequels because they're often repeating stuff that's already been done in the original game, and I'm quite ready. Or not ready and not expecting, but at the back of my mind, I'm always thinking it's not going to be as good as Dark Souls. That kind of warning is ringing, but nonetheless, I'm still ridiculously excited for it.
Well, I'm the same. I'm excited for it, but I have this sort of rule of threes that always seems to come true for me. Is that the first game's always the kind of original, interesting, little bit weird, little bit broken, but it's got a good idea. Second one fixes everything and it's perfect. Third one goes a bit too wide, I always find. Yeah. And there's so many game series I've played that have gone through that 1, 2, 3 loop where the third one's always been a little bit disappointing. So I'm worried, but I do have confidence that From can do it.
I'm taking great stock in the fact that experienced Dark Souls players have had hands on with 2 and have been blissfully sort of swimming adrift from it and just going, I don't even, but I want to. They've really been set adrift from their comfort zone, and that's really exciting because it says to me that they've taken a few risks, and maybe this is the reason that they wanted a different director on board, because we've still got the question to be asked: what is Miyazaki doing?
I was going to mention that earlier when we were talking about Demon Souls 2. It just struck me as really odd that they pulled him off that project. And maybe it was because he did Demon Souls and then took some of those sort of core ideas and fleshed them out into Dark Souls and made a sort of different game. And they were worried about whether he had it in him to twist the formula again and make something different. And maybe they wanted some fresh ideas, which I think is great actually, because especially in films more than games, the number of times you see the same director being brought back to just keep flogging the dead horse, as it were. So I think it's great they've got some new blood in there, but yeah, it definitely does. It just has me asking, what is he doing? Because he said very specifically he was taken off Dark Souls 2 and put on something else, and they haven't yet announced what it is.
Well, to throw a what if out there, what if Sony did want to do Demon Souls 2? So Sony own it. So as to whether From are participating or not is immaterial. Because Sony can do it. What if the reason that he was pulled off Dark Souls 2 was because From wanted him on directing Demon Souls 2, that they still...
If Sony are going to make it, we're going to make sure it's good,
Yeah, we're going to put, even if it's not From that are actually making it, if they've got the man involved in it, they might just see the Souls brand, even though they've taken their, their sequel in inverted commas and have done their own thing with it. They might be quite protective as the brand as a whole and might see that if a shite Demon Souls 2 comes out, that could have enough.
It's only going to do harm to them.
Yeah.
But if From could profit from one of their creations, and there could be this knock-on effect. Maybe what if Demon Souls 2 was PS4, and that was going to come
don't.
out, say Christmas, say Christmas. If that was to come out, say Christmas 2014, and if Dark Souls 2 is coming out in March 2014 on the regular consoles, the lead development platform on that has been PC. So we're going to see Xbox One and PS4 versions, I'd imagine, by autumn time. If Demon Souls...
Or maybe a year later when they do, the equivalent of the Prepare to Die edition, they could do that, couldn't they? That was a year later. So.
Well, I think it'll be quite a quick turnaround.
It certainly could be. Yeah, the theory is that it'll be quicker to port than has been before. So,
but if Demon Souls 2 then came about 2 or 3 months after Dark Souls 2 had come out on PS4 and Xbox One, then you
throw in Lords of the Fallen, and there's no reason for us to play any other game ever.
Yeah, I mean, well, even now, it's I've still got that mantra that you might buy new games, but Dark Souls doesn't let you play them for very long. But
I still haven't finished Skyrim because of that very fact.
They could build up.
No one ever finishes Skyrim. We just need to admit that to ourselves.
I can't play more than 15 minutes of it without thinking, ugh, anymore. It bums me out because I really enjoyed it at the time, and now I just look at it and think, I could be fighting better dragons.
Calamide changes everything. Hands and faces, something else. One of the things that surprised me is that the lack of games that have adopted the control mechanic of Dark Souls, because it is so intuitive, and it's got its roots based in Zelda in a lot of ways, and I think that's one of the reasons why so many Zelda fans have clicked onto it so well.
I think now you might be happy to disagree. I think it takes a sort of similarity to the way the Assassin's Creed games used to behave, because they had this sort of puppeting system they used to use, where X button did everything with your legs, triangle did everything with your head, and then you had like attacking hand and free hand. And it was quite easy to work out in the first, like, okay, right, I need to jump, so I need to use X. Oh, brilliant. And it was simple, and it sort of made sense, because it was, very, very physical sort of way of doing things. And it is completely, it's different entirely in the Souls games, but it uses that same sort of theory, and I like that. I got on really well with this. Like the early Assassin's Creed games, you could learn it in a few seconds. Like, okay, right, easy. Makes sense. And I like as well what I've seen a lot of recently, a lot of the next gen stuff. I've noticed in a lot of the interviews you read, they're like, oh, we're making it a bit like Dark Souls. Oh, good. Yes, take the things that we love. Except, like, I heard it mentioned, like, Payday 2 is going to be like Dark Souls. Yeah. Like, how? Fuck off. No, it's...
Exactly. And that's the problem is, are these developers saying it's like Dark Souls, or is it actually like Dark Souls? Because it's easy to glom on to something that's currently popular and evokes a certain type of game just by dropping 2 words into your game description.
I think the one that I would flag up on the other side of that, which I think is going to be seriously influenced by Dark Souls, particularly the online stuff, is Destiny.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, because and there was a thing on Polygon where they went to Bungie and they were talking to a couple of the designers, and they were asking them what they really loved, and these 2 designers blushed, looked at each other, looked away, and said Dark Souls in a way which says everything to me. It just, if it was written down, it wouldn't have worked as much as that that siren from the sea that constantly calls them back.
Definitely. So, and in a way, in a certain extent, the Division as well looks to be taking that sort of connected world, but not offensive.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see the people that just sort of take the design broad strokes and think that it's like that, or the people that genuinely get it. Because I'm not an online gamer at all.
Oh, me neither.
I'm a very solitary sort of single player type guy. But I love the Demon Souls and Dark Souls stuff. And when I first saw ghosts running through my game in Demon Souls, it just lit a fire within me. It was phenomenal. And even in Dark Souls, the first point where you realise that the bell ringing was someone in a different game that had gotten there.
Yeah.
Yep. Or you get an extra Estus flask and you're like, what's doing that? And then you realise that it's the last bonfire you sat at being kindled. Yeah, no, it's great.
Those wonderful unanswered questions where you're not walking up to an NPC and go, well, I believe if you have the Estus flask and someone else is nearby in another world.
Yeah, exactly.
Would you like to hear this again?
Questions, yeah.
Oh, you hit X. I'll tell you again. Ah!
Yeah, absolutely. I remember first time I played Demon Souls, every bloodstain I came upon, hit it and watched. Just stood there and watched what was happening to see if I could get any piece of information from it.
Did you watch the ones in the Nexus? Thinking, who are they possibly fighting here?
Yeah, a number of times that, and it's only when you've been through the first couple of worlds you realise, oh, I know what they're doing, and now I'm going to do it too.
Yeah,
you just see them all running off.
That's who they're fighting.
On those first runs of Demon Souls, though, in particular, honestly, I couldn't have been any more diligent with leaving messages on the floor. It was like, I am. You are my people. I am your people. We will help each other. And there was that, even though obviously it was open to trolling and at times wonderful comedy. It just felt important, and it felt like a genuinely connected multiverse in a way that online gaming has never felt to me before.
Yeah, absolutely.
Parallel university sort of style. University? Wrong word. Parallel universes, that's the word.
Yeah, absolutely. But just the notion that whether it's a genuine message or a trolling message doesn't actually matter. That doesn't impact what I think of it. Whereas if you're playing online and it's a matchmaking system and you're match made into teams with a bunch of people who are idiots, that negatively impacts the way I play the game. Whereas if someone leaves a trolling message and I fall for it, they say, great treasure ahead, I turn a corner and get slammed by a giant club. Fine, they got me. I absolutely accept that. That's an intentional trolling, and I fell for it, and I should have been smarter. And again, I put that on myself. If I end up with an idiot who's swearing or calling everyone around them all names under the sun in a Halo game, I don't feel like that's on me. I feel like that's on the game, and it makes me not want to play that multiplayer in that game at all.
But do you remember that first point where, and exactly the sheer terror when you first got invaded on Demon Souls or Dark Souls?
Yeah,
it genuinely felt like someone had kicked your front window in and had come into the living room. It really was like, what? And even knowing that was a mechanic in the game, it just felt like you were being stalked. It felt like an invasion of privacy. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, because the game suddenly feels like it's not in your control, and that's not something you're used to in a single-player game. Yeah.
I remember the first invasion I had in Demons. I panicked. I knew that you could get invaded before I played it. I knew it would happen. But you say the first time it happens, and your guts just kind of knot up, and you're like, oh God, what's happening? Who is it? Where is he? Oh shit! And you look over and you kind of just see him on a different catwalk, thinking, oh Christ, he's here!
I think that's an interesting distinction, though, isn't it? Because in Dark Souls, you have to accept that you're going to be invaded. You make a conscious decision to become human, and that allows you to summon in, but it also allows you to be invaded. It's a real obvious risk-reward strategy.
Yeah.
Whereas in Demon Souls, every time you kill one of the bosses, you're made human. And you would quite happily wander into the next world, not necessarily understanding that happened. And that's why you were getting invaded even necessarily. So yeah, I think in Demon Souls it hit me harder, I think, because I didn't understand why it was happening sometimes and not others, whereas maybe by the time I played Dark Souls I just heard that was the case and knew, but it just seems like you're inviting that, or you're at least opening the door to it a little bit more than in Demon Souls.
Yeah, it's more the necessity of it as well sometimes, because in Demon Souls, unlike Dark, when you're not a human, as you're all aware, we don't have as much health, which is just like you go and you die and think, right, okay, I'll try again. What do you mean I've only got half my health?
But was
it not hard enough already?
I genuinely had no idea that they were withholding NPCs and battles from you until way after my first playthrough. When I discovered that Beatrice was in the bushes just before the Moonlight Butterfly, no idea. And even things like I'm sure that the first point where Man-Eater Mildred invaded, I just genuinely thought that was a Black Phantom. I didn't think it was a Black Phantom NPC. I just thought it was a Black Phantom.
Yeah.
And stumbling upon that stuff was incredible. But with regards to risk and reward, I'd always have to flag up trying to get to Ornstein and Smo in Anor Londo.
Oh God!
And doing that run without being invaded and trying to bring people in at the same time.
I got so frustrated with that. It got to the point where, like 3 or 4 times in a row, I didn't even get to the boss fight that I was trying to get to for being invaded. And the final time was the one that actually gave me the will to carry on and go and do that fight, because the person invaded, and I'd already been invaded once in Anor Londo up on the roof where the 2 Silver Knights are.
Oh, yeah, yep.
There. And I was in the middle of fighting one of those Silver Knights when this guy invaded, and he came from behind me and killed me. And I was just like, really? You couldn't have waited for me to finish this fight? And of course he couldn't. That's not why he invaded.
Yeah.
But I was in the hall right in front of Ornstein and Smo, and I was fighting one of the Royal Sentinels. And I saw this guy. Well, I saw the pop up saying he'd invaded, and then I saw him just drop down the stairs over the other side, and thought, "Oh God, he's going to come over and just make my day hell." He didn't. He stood there, and then I started getting self conscious because I was making a hash of the fight, and thinking, "Oh, he just thinks I'm an absolute idiot now." and then at the end of it, he was just pointing at the ground. I went over and he dropped, I think, 9 Humanity and 9 Titanite shards, and then just left. Then just left the game. Didn't even want to kill me, and I was just like, yes, I absolutely can go and kill Ornstein and Smo now, because it turns out even when you're invaded, it's not unnecessarily a bad thing. But yeah,
what I'd love to see in Dark Souls 2 is I'd love to see them take away the fact that an invader isn't bothered by enemies. Because it'd be great in Dark Souls 2 is if an invader came in and there was tons of enemies, that you both be hacking into the enemies, and or one of you would be looking to try and get the advantage over the other at the same time. That'd be amazing.
That would be great, because that would negate the whole. Because I've seen like invaders just sort of sit near really sort of awful, like those 2 the giants, and they just sit there and go, "Go on then, yeah, you ready?
Yeah,
come on, come on,
yeah,
come on."
No, I've had someone literally chase me around Anor Londo, just like getting my attention, then running away, and then when I don't follow them because I know what they're doing, coming back and trying to hit me while I'm unawares, and then it just the only 2 things you can reasonably, 3 things you can reasonably do in that situation is, 1, you can fall for their trap. 2, you can just say no, stand in a corner with your back to a wall where they can't get behind you, and just say no, you either fight me here or we're both going to sit and just waste our time. And then it comes down to who's got the most free time on their hands. Or you just run off a cliff and say, right, I'm done with this, and kill yourself, and at least know where you're going to find your...
You didn't win.
Yeah, exactly.
I lost, you didn't win.
You.
You're not the boss of me. I'm just thinking towards things like Dark Souls 2. If you do say get an invader that comes in and you've maybe got a shield and a big sword, and suddenly that invader puts the shield on their back and then starts using 2 weapons, one in each hand, and if people start, I don't know, altering their weapons on the fly like that. And if shields on the back can negate a backstab as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm so excited for it.
I mean, the one big thing that I'd like them to not to necessarily fix, but just make better in Dark Souls is please make the summoning actually work.
Well, it's servers this time, isn't
Because
it? Like
Christ on a
Souls.
bike, how long did we spend wandering around trying to summon each other in? Particularly in the new content in Ulasil.
Yeah.
Hours of our lives stood there. I think once it was 45 minutes trying to get hold of each other.
The funniest one was when the glitch hit, and we were in
the
Super
glitch.
Giant, and we were still trying to summon each other in.
Yeah, and the lights were flickering on and off, and oh my god, and the summon signs were vanishing, and Jesus, that was night. And it wouldn't show if someone invaded. It wouldn't tell you. It would just happen, and you'd be like, "Who's that?"
Yeah, even knowing this stuff, it wasn't a case of, we'll leave Dark Souls alone until we've finished it. Until this glitch has been fixed. Wasn't even on the cards. Wasn't even vaguely on the cards.
We pushed through, and it was awfully broken, but very funny.
Yeah.
So please put one of those in again, please, if you're listening from software. Please break it once a week, just for about an hour.
Yeah, just so that we don't know. We log on. We've no idea what's going to happen.
That's what it is. Like take the world tendency from Demon Souls, but make it like world glitchiness.
I tell you what, on a serious note, I'd love to see them do events in Dark Souls 2.
Yeah.
Like random enemies that would come into the world, or not just the lighter or darker aspect, but where it would be like, on February the 13th, this is going to be hunting in the world. On say March 19th, the developers are going to be invading as Black Phantoms. Or, just have some punctuated dates where stuff's going to happen.
Patches week.
Love that to pieces.
A step in the right direction in that respect. In Demon Souls, obviously, Old Monk, if you're playing online, whether or not you're human, that doesn't affect it. That will be another player coming in as the Old Monk, or rather, I guess it is the Old Monk, isn't it? But it looks like to a certain extent they're bringing that back in with reports that the Mirror Knight, when Dark Souls 2 is actually live and public, the Mirror Knight sort of slams the mirror down and a phantom comes out of it, and that will potentially be other players. That's the rumor, at least.
Did you hear that he might slam out more than one of those?
Apparently, yeah.
Oh God.
or at least if you haven't killed him in time, then he'll slam the mirror down. Another one may come out.
4 Kings style, or 5 Kings, depending on how slow you go.
Or and believe me, I could not believe this when I saw it. 1 or 2 Kings, if you're doing that much damage.
Excellent. I heard a report of 7 somewhere, which I don't believe.
Because we had 5 in one playthrough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, they'll keep respawning, and because the problem is that 2 things: you can keep damaging the overall health bar even after the king has died. A bit like Gwendolyn, that you can keep hitting the air where he was and doing damage to him, even though he's technically teleported away.
His hitbox lives there, but he doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. So same with the 4 Kings. You can get 3 hits in after them. But yeah, you can get 5 Kings, and I guess technically if you just stand there and wait for them to spawn in, you could get not all at once, but a 6th or a 7th King, because you could have killed, say, the first 4 and then have a 5, 6, 7 spawn in. But there's a discrepancy between the damage that's done to the individual king and the damage that's done to the overall health bar for some reason occasionally. But yeah, if you're doing enough damage to the and making sure you're doing the hits in the right order, so that you do as much damage as you can on the first king to get a little bit of health left on him, and then do loads and loads of damage in a couple of hits, it'll all come off the overall health bar, and you can, in theory, kill them in 1 or 2 kings. But it's real specific setups, and you've got to get it absolutely right to do that. But yeah, there's actually some videos I watched that were challenge videos of one-shotting all the bosses.
I heard of that, yeah.
And aside from, I think Iron Golem was one of them they couldn't do. But yeah, most other bosses, it was like, yeah, they're managing to do one-shots on them, which is...
Fuck me.
Yeah, if you get massively overpowered weapons, and then obviously get stuff like Power Within and Red Tear Stone Ring and stuff, those going, especially if it's magic and you can have like Bellowing, is it Bellowing Dragon Crest? I think it's Bellowing, yeah, that enhances, and Dust Crown on as well. Then yeah, you can do some ridiculous damage in a single shot. So yeah. Yeah, exactly. Worth looking at, just because it's unbelievable stuff that can be done with Dark Souls, that you just never even realise, no matter how many hours you've put into the game.
Well, there was a thing on once again on that latest sort of Varty video, 5 things you didn't know about Dark Souls, and he was on about oral decoy. And he goes into this footage of him going into the Capra fight, chucking out oral decoy, and Capra just tries to swipe the wall in the corner. And then he just runs up the step. The dogs and Capra just run in the corner, and they're like chasing shadows. And he just runs up the top of the stairs and then lobs fireballs down. It's just like, I've never even used that thing.
Yeah, I've rarely used much magic at all, but stuff like Chameleon and Hidden Body, I play stealth games quite a lot and quite happily. Hidden Body seems useless to me in Dark Souls because I'm never trying to sneak by someone. I take an enemy at a time, and I play similar, to the way you guys have described before, which is edge forward, shield up, take one enemy at a time, aggro a single enemy with a bow if you need to do that.
Well, I've seen a really good use of the Chameleon spell, the one where you become like a box or a flower or something.
Yeah, or a flower pot, yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a really, really good use of it on a video. Basically, a guy invades, and then they basically play a shell game. So they all put on three people. Yeah, they put on like barrels. I think it's at the front of the undercarriage, and they run around in little circles. And the invader walks up and points at one.
Points at one of them.
Yeah,
and
decloak. It wasn't that one. They have to fight to the death, and then okay, next one. And I thought that was genius.
My favourite one of the Chameleon ones is the guy that turns into a vase and then follows a player through a level, and every time the player turns around, they turn back into the vase. And so it's not even about killing the player; it's just as if they can actually recognise. It's almost like the Metal Gear Solid thing of, I didn't notice a vase there before.
It's just a box. It's just a box. It's fine. It's just a box. It's always just a box.
Is it Red Rosie does some excellent stealth kills, chameleon kills, where the character will just hide in the corner, then the player will run past, and I think they use Gravelord sword and do the Gravelord sword dance. Oh no, beg your pardon. Gravelord's sword has an AoE attack if you do a heavy attack with it, I think. And they just use that. And so, like in Sense Fortress, they're running across a little bridge and you just hit them with the AoE attack. It throws them in the air and throws them to their death. Yeah. It's so cheap, but it's so funny to see them just, standing there as in Sense Fortress. It's one of the statues, the Black Knight statues.
Oh.
And it's just so funny.
As an aside, the entire time I played through Sense Fortress, I expected one of those fucking statues to wake up.
Yeah.
The whole time, jumping at shadows, the whole time. Oh, Christ, it's a Black Knight. Oh, wait, it's okay. Oh, God, there's another one.
I had a similar thing to that in Rogue Legacy where you've got chests that are chests, and then sure enough, just like Dark Souls, you have chests that are mimics that occasionally, you see them like
occasionally
shake.
Go for you, yeah.
And you walk up to them and hit them, and sure enough, they wake up. And there's also statues in that game, and I always expected one of the statues. I mean, I break them all apart for like coins or health or whatever anyway, but I always expected one of them just to then pop up and turn into an enemy, but never did. So
bless. Well, I'd like to probably draw this to a close now because frankly I have to go to bed because I have to go to work in the morning.
Seems reasonable.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to say thank you to James for joining us.
Not at all. Thank you very much. It's been great.
Yeah. If you want to plug anything, James, plug now.
Yes, please do. Please plug Cane and Rinse as well, because if people haven't jumped on there, they need to.
Yeah, so I guess the reason that probably we got in touch was the first Kane and Rinse episode I hosted was on Dark Souls. And I'm on Kane and Rinse quite a lot recently, as it happens, but at kaneandrinse.com you will find all of the work I and my crewmates do in terms of weekly podcasts on a different game every week. This week's one was actually I've been on a few recently. What have we done? We have done Star Fox. Super Meat Boy is this week. Next week coming up, LA Noire. So yeah, loads of different games, all sorts of different ages of games and different types of games.
I listened to the Splinter Cell one, and I'm not particularly a Splinter Cell fan. It's just nice at times to listen to people talk about a game and the back and forth between it. And I know the DMC one kind of turned me on to the game because I thought people had generally been quite disparaging about it, but the enthusiasm there and
absolutely,
that's cool.
Yeah, so we make sure that we have 4 or 5 people generally on each show, sometimes 3, and they've all completed the game. So that's the idea, is that positive or negative, these are fully formed opinions that are a few months after the game came out. And DMC, I would absolutely, hands down, say is one of my favourite games of the year so far. It's incredible.
I thought the Dishonored episode was fantastic as well because there was some very different viewpoints on the game, and the back and forth and the debating and maybe even meeting halfway at times. Possibly reluctantly with it was made for a really fantastic listen.
Well, we've had some interesting ones recently because we've done Fahrenheit. We've got LA Noire coming up next week, and then we've got our 100th show is going to be Heavy Rain, and those are all 3 of those are fairly contentious games in terms of there are some people who really like them and some people who really don't, and thankfully we seem to have a reasonably good balance on the team as well in terms of those opinions, which makes it quite interesting to try and work out why it is we came to such different conclusions. And then you get shows like Splinter Cell where you've got 3 guys on there who just absolutely adored the game and want nothing more than to gush over it, which is fine because it's Chaos Theory is probably my favourite stealth game ever, so it deserved its consensus, I think.
Them's fighting words.
I was going to say Paddy's a Metal Gear Solid boy, so that's.
I never was a Metal Gear fan, but then we were doing the Metal Gear series, and basically because no one wanted, or we were a person short for Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2. So I played through those and then played through the rest of the series sort of as it went. I ended up on, I think, 3 of those podcasts. Okay. I'm absolutely converted. I'm a massive fan of Metal Gear now as well. But I think it does things other for me than necessarily just the pure stealth mechanics, which I think Chaos Theory, in terms of just being almost abusive in terms of how just, I mean, they really are over the top stealth mechanics. They're really quite harsh. And I play those games. I mean, if I get spotted, it's an instant reload. I don't even bother trying to fight out of it because as far as I'm concerned, it's a puzzle game, and if I get spotted, I have failed. Therefore, redo.
It's that Tony Hawk's instant restart maneuver.
Basically,
I used to do. No, restart. Every single bit, don't restart.
Now, you see, on the Metal Gear Solid front, I've never played a Metal Gear Solid game, and I'm looking hard at that. That
Legacy Collection,
the one that comes out next week.
Metal Gear Solid is one of my favourite games of all time, and I only first played it a year ago now, something like that.
Wow!
Oh wow!
And it is, even now, it is an outstanding game, and it whatever other people say, it's certainly worth going back and playing Metal Gear 2. Maybe not Metal Gear 1, but Metal Gear 2. Go back and play that as well, because you'll start to realise that actually a lot of the seeds for that series came before even Metal Gear Solid came out. A lot of people say, Metal Gear Solid 2 and Metal Gear Solid 3 were just kind of, to a certain extent, rehashes of the first one. It started way before then. There's more going on in that than a lot of people give credit for, I think.
Yeah. And my last question for you, and this is very important because I may never speak to you again if you answer this wrong. PS1 version of Metal Gear Solid or GameCube Twin Snakes version?
PS1 is the one.
Oh, thank Christ. Good.
Correct answer. Twin Snakes, and I have no intention to, really. I know there's sort of mixed messaging on that. Some people thought that Hideo Kojima hated the Twin Snakes version, but actually it turns out that maybe he didn't really. He was okay with it, but no, the only one I played with, it's on PSN. You can play Metal Gear Solid on your PS3. That's where I played it, and yeah, it's just fantastic. I think Metal Gear Solid for me, or the Metal Gear series, it does a lot more in terms of story for me than Splinter Cell does, which is where it gets its props as far as I'm concerned. As insane as it is, it's got a lot of tropes and messages and repeated themes that really I find incredibly interesting.
Yay! Someone else likes it. Yay!
Well, like I say, it's been a genuine pleasure to have you, James. So thank you very much for joining us. It's
always fun to chat Dark Souls, and to have a podcast where it's all Dark Souls is nothing but just pure joy, frankly. So thank you very much for having me on.
Fantastic. And as always, thank you again for listening. This was Twin Humanities, the Dark Souls podcast. I was Paddy.
I'm CJ.
Which we didn't announce at the start, but by now you should know that.
That's Mr. James Carter as well.
Yeah. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you for another one at an undisclosed time.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.